Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Joshablon, and welcome to the next part in our series on means of achieving depth. Now, this is part 3, and today we are going to be covering one that is very, very useful, and we can use it to build upon some of the other ones that we've already learned. And this one is going to be shading. Now, I'm going to do my own series on shading a little bit later on, but this shading is more specific to identifying where your light source is coming from and using it to create depth. Now, this is mostly going to be used when overlapping doesn't work, because there are some times where it really doesn't work. So if we draw a circle, a little square, triangle, you can't tell if those are three-dimensional objects or if that's all one object. It could be some logo and I could just want it to be one complete object, but you're not quite sure. You think that the circle is in front of the square and you think that the square is in front of the triangle, but all in all, you're not exactly sure. Overlapping works great if you just want to maybe do a circle and then like a circle behind it. It's great because you can tell which one's in the distance. But in this case, overlapping doesn't work. And so you need to add some shading to make the overlapping effective here. And so, just to show the difference, we're going to just quickly draw the scenario again. Circle, square, triangle. And we're going to kind of recreate it almost, but using shading. So we're going to go forward and draw our circle, which is now going to be a sphere. And we're going to be adding a little bit of shading onto it. I just like using a pencil tool for this, just because it isn't, it's a little bit transparent, which is nice. We'll blur it out just to give it a bit more of a smooth shade all along it, and so that we can get some midtones in there. And there we go, there's our sphere all nicely shaded. Not shaded probably to the best effect that you can get, but it is still shaded. And so what that does is it gives your sphere just a little bit more of a three-dimensional look to it, which is quite nice actually. So now we're going to move on from there and we're going to do the cube. Oh, oops. So, now, doing the cube. What we're going to do, I want that there. It's going to go up around this way. When drawing things like cubes and everything, you need to make sure that the lines on your faces are going in the same direction. You don't want, like, if I was drawing that face again, I don't want one line like that and one line like this and then two lines like that. That doesn't make a good face, or it makes it look angled or abstracted. And so just making sure that all of the sides are parallel to each other, meaning that those two lines will never meet. That's really, really important when drawing something like a cube. So there we go, there's our lovely cube. Just to give it that little bit extra, we're going to shade it. There we go. So we're just going to be shading that face of this cube. And after we shade this, we're going to add a little pyramid on top. And yeah, we're going to just do a simple square base pyramid. Not that we're going to even see all the sides of the pyramid, but yeah. So we'll do that. Let's blur this just to make it look a little bit better. And there we go. Awesome. I like to highlight just the sides of the face, just so that all of the shading doesn't make the edge be lost in this kind of drawing. This kind of drawing, the edges are very, very important. So moving on, we're going to make our little pyramid on top of this cube. So I'm going to have one face going that way, one face going this way, and I'm going to have its lines parallel to the cube's lines, just because that's how it's going to be laid on top. So there we go. We'll shade that face all nicely. Now here's where a little bit of an overlapping technique comes in. If you'll notice, this edge here of our cube, it's inside of the triangle, and that's not something that we want. So if we just erase a little bit, like I talked about in the last video with overlapping, it makes this pyramid seem like it's on top of the square, which it is. And so just by combining a couple of techniques, we can create just a little bit more of a three-dimensional aspect to this image. And so there we go. You can already see the difference, but we're not even done yet. We're not done the shading, because as you can see, there's no shading here underneath that image. There's no shading anywhere down here. And so we're going to do that over here for these shapes though. So we're gonna just quickly shade this all in. And what this is going to do is it's going to identify where our light source is. And our light source, if you can imagine, we'd have something like a light bulb or something there, and it would be pointing down this way. And so we're going to create kind of a shadow that corresponds with that. And you want to keep it constant for basically all of your shapes. You don't want for this cube, you don't want the shadow to be coming off over here, because that's not where the light source is coming from. As you can see with the sphere, we already have it moving, the shadow moving in that direction. And so you want all of the shadow of the cube to be moving in that direction as well. And so we'll just draw out some lines from it, and just kind of to create the effect that we want. There we go. So that's working great for us. I'm just going to fill that in a little bit faster. There we go. There's kind of a shadow. With the specific angle of the shadow that we have right now, I don't think I'm going to be adding any kind of a shadow for the pyramid that we've drawn. But I will just quickly go through, blur the shadow just to make it a little bit smoother transitions throughout the entire thing, because you don't want crappy shadows in the end. So there we go. That's all done. Perfect. Now you might just want to go along and trim up your shadows a little bit. Some people like really, really sharp shadows, and some people like kind of dim shadows that slowly act like a gradient. I want my shadows to be nice and sharp on this picture. And so there we go. So it's rather easy to see the difference between these two pictures. One of them, quite nice shading, and it works really, really well. The other picture doesn't have any shading at all. It's a bit confusing, and overlapping doesn't necessarily work to the fullest degree. And so just by adding a little bit of shading, you can add a lot of depth, and shading is probably the most important thing that you can be combining with all the different methods that we're going to be talking about. So if you just use something like perspective lines, it works great, but in some situations it doesn't work as well as it could. But with shading, it works even better. Overlapping, again, it works well in lots of situations, but in some it doesn't. So you add that little bit of shading, and then it works great. And with all the other ones that we're going to be talking about, if you just add shading, it adds so much. And so, yeah, thank you so much for watching this tutorial. I hope it's helped, and we will see you in the next tutorial.